I'm Mark Watkins. Welcome to Innocent on Legal TV. In April 1999, TV presenter Jill Dando was gunned down on the doorstep of her Fulham home. Following an extensive police investigation, Barry George was convicted and sentenced in relation to her murder in 2001. Barry George is about to have an appeal which will be heard in the middle of this month. He's already had one appeal turned down. Joining me to look at the issues and evidence surrounding this celebrated case is Brian Cathcart, journalist and author and professor of journalism at Kingston University, and Alan Baker, forensic scientist from Berikon. Welcome both. Brian, if I can start with you initially. Your book came out, didn't it, just after the original conviction. Why did you feel compelled to write it?
Well, it started, of course, with the murder, which is a sensational murder by any measure. I mean, any journalist will tell you. This was the most popular woman in the country. This was the iconic face of the BBC at the time. She was the queen of prime time. And this was an extraordinary murder, a cold-blooded murder on her doorstep, a single shot to the head. It stopped the whole country in its tracks on the day it happened. So naturally, a lot of journalists were drawn to it, and I was, quite soon convinced that there was, it was so intriguing it would be a book.
In a sentence, you obviously felt that there was a market for a book on the subject.
Yes, yes. There was enough to write about, as it were.
Okay.
Yes.
And what conclusions did you draw at the end of your research?
I think it's a very complex case. It's astonishing in several ways, but I came to the conclusion immediately the verdict was announced that I was very uncomfortable with it.
Alan, let me turn to you. Your area of expertise, of course, is in the arena of forensic science.
Yes.
And that was an absolutely critical part of the evidence adduced at the original trial, wasn't it? For those people not familiar with that, can you just take us through what sort of issues were being tried?
Sure. I mean, in any forensic investigation of a crime, obviously the key issue is preservation of the crime scene. And obviously in this case, outside Jill Dando's house, that would have been preserved, forensically examined, materials taken, photographed, etc. The critical factor then is always the case of how long before they apprehend somebody, and obviously then subsequently, for example, take their clothing or footwear or whatever materials to examine at the laboratory. So the key issue in this case is the timescale from those two incidents, and in this particular case quite an extended period of time. Ultimately, when those items and materials arrive at the forensic laboratory, obviously that's when the proper forensic investigation will begin. And obviously in this particular case, given the nature of the crime, gunshot residue was of primary importance.
Brian Cathcart, the facts of this case are quite startling, weren't they, and quite shocking. Just run us through the basic facts, the modus operandi of the killer, the circumstances surrounding him approaching and coming into contact with the crime scene, and so on.
Yes, Jill Dando was returning to her home one morning, Monday morning, in London, as you say, in Fulham, a reasonably quiet street. She parked her car directly outside by her gate, got out of the car, made her way to the door, and at some stage between the car and the door was accosted by a man with a gun, who, in quite a striking and distinctive move, placed the tip of the gun against her head very firmly before shooting her. The effect of that was to silence the gun. So this gunshot in this quiet street was heard by no one.
Remarkable, isn't it?
Indeed. But the killer was seen by two people. A neighbour happened to look out his window through blinds and saw a man moving away from the gate. And another neighbour across the road saw the same man walk up the road briskly and break into a run.
Was it accepted at the trial that the person that lady saw was the killer?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. There was no doubt about that. And both of them described a man wearing a sort of mid-length coat of some sort, perhaps a sort of Burberry-type, barber-type coat, rather, with a thick black hair.
One of the most interesting features, Alan, I think also of this case is that, and perhaps you can help us out on this question, is when the police launched their investigation, unlike a lot of murder investigations, they actually had a title. It was Operation Oxborough, I think it was. Is that normal in a murder investigation for the police to go, some people might say, over the top because of who the subject of the murder was?
Again, I think it goes back to Brian's comment about the importance of the crime, the perception. A lot of serious crimes do attract...
Hold on a minute, it was just another murder.
Well,
in London. What's so important about that?
I think at the time, I think the perception was that this was a newsworthy item, obviously given the importance of the lady in question, shall we say. But I don't think it was anything other than, it was an ordinary street crime perhaps, but I think in the area that it was in and the nature of the crime, it had sort of all the hallmarks, the police would say, of a professional hit. I think that was the term that was used at the time. So the fact it was given an operational name at an early stage may be unusual, but I don't think, given the ingredients, it was probably entirely unsurprising.
Should we not read into that, Brian Cathcart, that here's a very famous person? You state that she was, in 1999, the most famous TV face, female TV face. Should we not read into the fact that they gave their operation a name, that they were under massive political and management pressure to get a result?
Well, we know that they were. This is taking place not long after the fallout from the Stephen Lawrence case. The Metropolitan Police has a trust problem at this moment. And there, right bang in the middle of London, is the most popular woman in the country is shot dead on her doorstep. You can understand why they would give it priority in those terms. I think there's another issue as well, which is that people's faith in law and order is at stake here, because it is the most popular person, it is the best known person in that way to have been murdered in this country. And I think I think it's legitimate for them to give it priority on those terms.